I must waste about 10 years of time a year of people being unmuted, of being muted. You add up all the seconds, it would probably be $1 billion in less. Jane, can you hear me? Jane, can your avatar hear me? Jane, can your avatar nod? How about Vidal? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
How do I sound?
Sound good. Crystal clear to me.
Okay, good. Have you been to one of these classes before, Vidal?
Yeah, I've been to all of them.
Okay. Oh, that's right. Now I recognize you. I'll just go to my camera, my laptop camera. So Jane, you hear me too? Okay, nod. It just looks like you're in shock.
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Okay.
I'm having a bad hair day, so I'm playing with my new avatar.
Do this.
Yeah.
Your avatar hair looks good.
Yeah, thank you. It has better hair day than I'm having.
Yeah, see. It's a memoji. Yeah, it's the memoji, right? How are you getting the avatar from where?
Zoom. I just put it together
Zoom.
from Zoom.
Oh, Zoom. I've never even used that one.
Yeah, somebody, I was in another meeting and somebody had theirs while they were having their lunch. And I thought, oh, what a cool idea. I'll try it.
I haven't even tried that. See,
Yeah.
a day goes by and I'm already behind.
It's hard to catch up.
We're going to talk all about it. All right.
Yeah.
Make sure my hair is good. I start recording. We'll talk all about it. Be the fun of let's see, record this. Hello everyone, in person and online. Welcome to is this the 5th session? I think it's the 5th session, 5 of 6 of my course and seminar series on XR and immersive media, number 5. I will share my screen in a minute. This evening, I'm devoting to what I call worlds, not to be confused with world building, or to be confused with the metaverse, which we'll also talk about. And I only have a few people here. So Jesse is returning for his 2nd class.
Yep.
Hello, Jesse. Jesse, coming to you. Oh, I should go onto the other camera for this. Jesse, why don't you give us a quick introduction?
So my name is Jesse Liu, and I'm basically working on a robotics startup right now. I'm interested in controlling the robots with like augmented reality devices, like command robots where to go and stuff. So
Jesse came here from the future and he works for Skynet. But hopefully he will realize that humanity is worth saving before he builds the AR controlled robot. But but it's kind of like an exoskeleton. It's the idea of an exoskeleton, right? But you could do it from, yeah, kind of like so you could actually use like a mocap setup to then run a real robot. That's pretty interesting. I mean, I have not.
So one of the main places I thought of it for was actually commercial sets, because when parents go on, we'll do like 1-day shoots and have to put it up instantly and take it down. So I'm wondering if you have like a super robotic set where you could just like look at it.
We could talk more about that. Good idea. And welcome. A little louder.
Immersive spatial design. So this is my very first class.
So you're interested in immersive spatial design.
Yeah.
And what's your major again?
Design interaction with cognitive science.
Cog sci. So it's a subspecialty in cog sci, design interaction. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's a really interesting major. We've had a couple people attend from that. Very relevant. And Hortense, want to introduce yourself again for the.
Hi, everyone. I go by she, her, hers, and I'm the director of the Anthropology, Performance, and Technology program as part of the Jacobs School of Engineering. And we are starting up what's called the Inqua Collaboratory over at Franklin Antonio Hall. Come and visit us sometime. We're in the lower level.
Thank you. And want to introduce yourself real quickly?
I'm Hong.
Speak up a little so I can hear you.
I'm a speculative design major,
Mhm.
and my interest is more related to theory and philosophy,
Theory of philosophy, speculative design. What department is speculative design in?
visual art.
School of Visual Arts, great. All right. I am now going to get into the subject matter for this evening. And people online, would you like to introduce yourselves while we're at it? Jane, why don't you unmute and introduce yourself? Or do I have to? unmute?
Hi, I'm Jane, and I work at Extended Studies in International Programs. And I've been doing some of these things on and off for a long time, but I'm not in graduate school like a lot of you. And I just really enjoy this. Right now, I'm interested in projection mapping. And I'm also interested in naked eye 3D because I don't have balanced vision. And so I can't really use the headsets. So that's kind of what I'm interested in right now.
And Vidal.
Yeah, hi. So I'm staff. I work in ITS as a project manager for main campus. Actually, I was a student at UCSD, graduated with visual arts and media with a minor in speculative design. Got interested actually before I came over to UCSD through journalism and immersive journalism. I was almost going to go to USC, but then decided to go to UC San Diego in hopes to actually continue on my education in AR and XR. Never got around to it, so I'm using this opportunity now to jump back into everything. So,
Welcome. And I got a little bit of a problem here. Stand by. Hang on one sec. My slides that finished today did not cooperate and update on my cloud. So that's the problem. Okay, there's another way. Stand by. I gotta get into my iCloud to open my keynote.
How many more sessions are in this?
So there's a special one, which is the last one next week, which I'll talk about in a second, which is also a reception and a mixer for the Producers Guild of America, the Television Academy of Arts and Sciences that are helping me with it. And that is going to be interesting. I hustled to, we have 5 panelists coming. We have Netflix, Disney, Lucasfilms, and Media Monks represented. Media Monks is a visual effects company. Media Monks.
So should we bring our our screenplays and stuff?
Yeah, it's everybody. Yeah. Well, you could get their, you could try to get their card or whatever. Network with them. That's why I'm doing this.
I know. I can't even, next week the same time. Is it next week the same time?
Same time, same station, but it's gonna be 4 to 7. And I'm gonna talk about it right now.
Oh, okay.
If I can, every time I do this, something else changes, so it's unbelievable how that happens. Now, let me share my screen.
So cool. I want to try to give myself an emoji.
Here we go. And let's get rid of this. I'm gonna change over to me. There's me. And pin. All right. Let me start with the top of this. All right, let me reintroduce myself. Stuart Walco, your humble instructor. This is XR and Immersive Media. I'm a producer, a project manager, and a science communicator at the Center for Astrophysics and Space Sciences at UCSD. And should be on the small mic. Okay, that should be better. Check. Yes. And I produced the podcast, the very popular podcast YouTube channel, Into the Impossible, with Professor Brian Keating, which is now in the top 1% of all Apple podcasts. And we are the creators. Professor Keating is the director of the Simons Observatory in Chile. And we also work with the Arthur C. Clarke Center for Human Imagination. Hide that. Okay. I'm getting some like what's talking here?
I think, is it echoing?
It's like hello. It's not me. Do you hear someone? Do you hear like another? That's possible. There you go. Okay, good call. Good call. Good ears. All right. Get rid of the echo. Okay, the XR and Immersive Media course. Here we go. And if I can just advance the slide. So this is class 5 to 6. Next week, the 6th class from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. I said 7:30 in case you want to hang out longer, on the 2nd floor of this building, the Design Innovation Building, at the event space, which is in that corner of the building, on the balcony, will be a reception and a panel discussion on XR and immersive storytelling, featuring myself moderating and ending the course, and 5 people that I've recruited from my friends and colleagues in Hollywood, including Chris Tomes, who's a UCSD alumni, and he's a senior VP of creative affairs at Disney. Joe Gill, who is also a UCSD alum, and he's a senior manager at Lucasfilms. John Canning, a friend of mine who is a very experienced XR and immersive and TV producer. Christina Lee Storm, who's an executive at Netflix and in charge of VR production for Netflix. Eric Shamlin, who's with Media Monks, which is a visual effects company. And Eric is also on the governors of the Television Academy of Arts and Sciences. This is a very unique opportunity to meet these people. This is the first time that there has been a Producers Guild of America event in San Diego. And it's one of the first times there's been a Television Academy of Arts and Sciences event in San Diego, because the LA Hollywood people don't usually come this far. But hopefully we will be attracting them now that we're ramping up in this field. I'm going to have the UCSD Visualization Lab open. We're going to open up the Sun Cave so you can get tours of the Sun Cave, courtesy of Professor Neil Smith, who you heard from in class number 2, if you were here. And that'll also be a great experience to see how UCSD is applying these methods to science and engineering, archaeology, and anthropology. Quote number one. I'll email it to you, the poster. The greatest revolution of our generation is the discovery that human beings, by changing the inner attitudes of their minds, can change the outer aspects of their lives. You know William James is? You say William James? What? Who knows who William James is? Anybody? Who does know? Hortense, tell us who William James is. He is considered the founder of psychology, the field of psychology. And he was a philosopher, theologian, and he wrote about the mind. So he's considered the first official, or one of the pioneers of psychology. But I like this quote because how does this change your inner world by being exposed to these worlds that we're going to talk about that are created for you? And is that going to have an impact on society, behavior, and even psychology? No. Longer quote here. Art is no longer limited to a frame on a wall. Art is becoming ever more an interactive practice. Collaboration has always enabled art's creation. Collaboration materializes consciousness. Art is consciousness. Techism is an appeal and return to that consciousness. The consciousness of art as shared, as thing, as idea, and as experience. Software allows the artist to become multifaceted and collaborative. By expressing yourself and finding what fits in collaborating with engineers, intelligent software, because you can. Sound familiar? A little bit? Art is experiential and phenomenal. We, the viewer, participate and discern for ourselves what we behold. Techism is the movement of our time, where we need to acknowledge digital disruption and accept the immense task of creating new culture that expresses our humanity in the digital age. So this is a quote from our guest this evening, Krista Kim, who is the founder of what has been named the Techism movement. She's a digital fashion designer, digital artist, conceptual artist, software engineer, conceptual art installation experiential artist, and she's fascinating. So I really think she's an interesting voice in the immersive and XR space. She's the co-founder of Zero Studio, which is a Web3 lab and production studio. And the way that I knew about her is the first thing is that thing on the lower left. She took over Times Square in New York City. Have you all been to Times Square in New York City? Have you been there? Have you been there? You've been there, right? She took over all the screens in Times Square and created an art installation out of all the screens with a soundtrack, with a original composed soundtrack. Pretty interesting. That's about as big of an art installation as you can think of. You can ask her. I don't know. I don't know how she did it. I mean, I can't figure out how she did it. She also became pretty famous, actually very famous around the world, for creating and successfully selling one of the first all digital houses as an NFT called the Mars House, which you can ask her about. I'll ask her about it. Recapping our other guests, Jason Eam, Trigger Studios, talked about all the different versions of AR, mostly for advertising and commercial applications. And then we had Greg Catano, who talked about location-based entertainment and related immersive experiences. Then we had three professors from UCSD talking about science applications. Dominique Russolo about cyber paleontology, Neil Smith about cyber archaeology, and Dr. Eric Viry, who talked about health and eye-brain issues with VR and other science research applications of VR. And then Jeff Chow on the last session talked about digital humans and his experience in digital domain and a few other things. That brings you up to date. So first, let's talk about our concept and vocabulary words of the night. Now that my son is in 5th grade, I've learned that that's all, I mean, all it's higher education, just like grades 1 through 5, just repeated again, just like with fancier words, kind of, because like, what's your vocabulary and what's history and it's all the same. And I think so. I like to give you vocabulary words or concepts in this field. It's amazing to me that even the most sophisticated people don't all agree on the same terms and don't know them all, right? Because they get into different silos. So co-presence is the first thing I want to talk about in the context of this evening's subject of worlds. And co-presence is the idea of how can you feel like you're with other people when you're not with them. So Zoom, right? We all use Zoom every day. We're co-present with people on Zoom. And after all this time, we now are so used to it that you just do FaceTime and Zoom normally. Well, I remember when picture phones were supposed to happen like 40 years ago, and they never happened, right? And it was a big deal if you could see someone you were talking to. Now we totally take it for granted, and you sort of feel like you're with those people in an environment. But can you take it to another level? What if you're with them in immersive environments, immersive worlds? Is that different? Is it better? What is it better for? And in terms of interaction design, or in terms of the philosophical and cognitive effects, what does it mean to be co-present in a virtual world, AKA the metaverse? We'll talk about that word. Then I want to talk about another concept called an industry standard. And this comes from my background in software product development and tech businesses for many years. When people say there's a standard, what does that really mean? I want to talk about that a little bit more because that's now becoming very important in this world. And it's opposed to interoperability. So anyone here in the sciences, especially engineering, runs into this problem. You create a data set in MATLAB and it doesn't work in Wolfram, right? Or you create a device that uses Arduino and Android, and then it won't work with a Mac OS. But maybe you could copy and paste the code, and you can use Python, right? Python works on Mac OS, it works on Android, it works on mobile devices, it works on desktops. So Python is very interoperable. Is Python a standard? Sort of. Is it an open standard? Well, kind of yes, right? Because Python, anyone can learn it, and it's used universally in the sciences. Scripting languages. And of course, what's the standard that everyone uses all day, every day? You probably use it 100 times a day. What? Well, ASCII for sure. Yeah, but that's actually right. ASCII is the international code for when you hit a key on a keyboard on a computer. It's a code. It's a bit code, and every letter of the alphabet, as well as every character in every language, has an ASCII code. The American Standard Code for Information Interchange. But what I was thinking of is the web, right? The World Wide Web. The World Wide Web has a standard, and that's called HTML, Hypertext Markup Language. And that's controlled by a standards body called the Web Consortium, World Wide Web Consortium, that manages that standard. And every browser, every time you hit a website, almost everything you do all day long now has some interoperation with the HTML standard. And there's many, many, many more. So then there's another term that's now going to become very popular because it was mentioned about 100 times yesterday when Apple made this announcement called spatial computing. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that means. And then I want everyone to understand what an SDK is. So if you're a software engineer or you've ever taken a programming course, you know what that is. So you know what it is, right? You're using it. You know what it is? So a software, an SDK is a software development kit. Now, people throw these words around and they go, oh, there's an SDK for that. Well, what does that really mean? So now if you're going to contemplate producing content for immersive and extended reality, you're going to start to have to learn software development kits for different standards so that whatever you make can interoperate on different devices in different worlds. We don't have to do this. The only news roundup we're talking about, of course, is this. So, bearing the lead, yesterday at the Apple Worldwide Developer Conference, all the air was taken out of the room for, what was it like? It was 2 hours, like 40 minutes of it was taken up by this announcement or more. I saw the whole thing for about half of it was about this. So the Vision Pro, which is priced at $3,499. Now this is juxtaposed with the new MetaQuest 3 for comparison and contrast. Really interesting point is today in the entire field of immersive media and extended reality because of these two devices, which break a lot of ground and bring together what has been tried for the last 20 years with billions and billions of dollars spent by companies that have failed to do this. There have been 100 different headsets that have come and gone. And this is now like the Tyrannosaurus Rex of these HMDs, the top predators. These are the two. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. First of all, what was really interesting to a lot of people is that during the announcement of the Apple Vision Pro, what's one term that they did not ever say? I think they may have said virtual reality a couple times. Not very much though. What did they not say? Did you hear it? Who else heard it? Anybody out there in Zoom land hear it? The thing they never said one time is metaverse. Not one time. The omission of saying that is significant for the obvious reason that they're going up against Meta, which is all about the metaverse, and the maybe less obvious reason that they're not really interested in a metaverse. They did a lot of gymnastics to point out that their device lets you anchor yourself in the real world easily. It's got very good see-through capability. Whereas the MetaQuest 3 also advertises very good see-through capability, but it's opaque. And the Apple Vision Pro is translucent with an adjustable translucency knob on the side of it. So you can instantaneously turn it up or turn it down to be opaque or clear. Interesting, different positioning. It is impressive to me, and there's going to be a lot of debate, and this one I'm going to focus on for like at least 20 minutes to next week, is asking all these experts in the field what they thought about this. Is this, and one of the questions I asked in the first class is XR and immersive media a mass medium? It's a rhetorical question, but do these devices make it so? And one of the things they talked about in the announcement yesterday is that the Vision Pro serves the purpose of a large screen television, a theatrical size screen, a desktop screen, a surround sound system like a sound bar, a mobile device, a scanner, as well as an AR and VR device, which is how they justify the money, right? Because you're going to buy a large screen TV, it's $1,000. If you want a really good sound bar, it's $1,000. If you want to really, right? So if you added all that, if you could truly replace those things with this, it's a bargain. And on top of that, you've got 5 cameras and 12 sensors. Right off the top, one of the things that impressed me about it the most is it, and I talked about this in the last class when I talked about production tools, this allegedly, none of us actually tried it, so we have to make sure it actually does it, will allow you to record 3D binocular video. So that is an interesting trip. You could buy a 3D binocular video camera, but it's $1,000 to get a decent one. How do you play it back? Well, you play it back in the Vision Pro. It's not a flat screen. It's a binocular stereopsis display device. You have to have a binocular headset, right? Where it's displaying an independent image in each eye. That's how you get 3D stereo vision. That's called stereopsis. So you can play it back in any device that does that and is interoperable with this device. So that's opening up a whole can of worms about which device and how, but forget about everything else. Just the fact that it does that at all is impressive to me, because I know just how difficult it is and how tricky it is to do 3D videography. It's the realm of $100,000 camera rigs, 5-10 years ago. Yes, Jesse.
I was just gonna say, I think it's interesting that, does it have controllers that come with it or not?
Oh yeah, it's got controllers, it's got hand tracking, but it also has eye tracking. Eye tracking. What?
The shadows, how it actually,
The shadows, right? Well, this is now we're getting into some other aspects of rendering and how it displays AR content. So it's got that mixed reality capability that was part of the HoloLens and other things. Yes. So sound effects is a completely different topic than 3-dimensional sound design. So it's not an effect. It's capturing localized sound. And allegedly it can do this while it's recording, and it will play it back, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a few minutes. Allegedly, the Meta Quest 3 also does a lot of these things. 3D video recording, of course, is not one of them. But juxtaposing these two things and the vast difference in price and capability is a very interesting thing we can spend the rest of the night on, and we should discuss it a lot more. Also of interest were these little things that they mentioned, which was sporting events. So Apple bought a company called NextVR, which happened to get the virtual reality rights to Major League Baseball, Major League Football, the NFL, soccer, tennis, and a bunch of pro sports. Allegedly, Meta has it for the NBA. So you'll be able to watch these sports in this virtual world. Now, the interesting thing to note about both of these is, we can play the videos there if you want. They have their own built-in proprietary technologies. And Apple came up with a brand new, very sophisticated silicon chip that they designed themselves. So the R1 chip, which is in this, is built from the ground up to handle the incredibly powerful computing that is needed to do all this stuff. Sensor fusion, LiDAR, point clouds, integrating it with 9-axis integrated measurement units, 3D sound, being able to anchor virtual objects to a real environment, on and on it goes. Whereas Meta does not have that capability. Right there, just designing a chip like that is a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar effort that takes hundreds of people to design a chip like that. Apple, who makes the chips, by the way? Nope. Yes. So there's only one company in the world that can make these chips. And that's the Taiwan company called TSMC. That's another subject. So Meta uses our backyard friends here, Qualcomm, and their new chip called the XR2 5G Snapdragon, which is an evolution of the Snapdragon line, which is the competing chip to this R1. And it has all sorts of similar capabilities. Now, interestingly, the Snapdragon says 3K per eye. The R1 is going even beyond that. They're at 4K per eye. So handling the amount of information to create these displays independently in each eye is a massive amount of rendering power. So you can compare that. So now we've got two horses in the race, right? You've got these two completely different, non-interoperable, totally separate standards, and they're now going to compete. Meta has its own SDKs, and two of them are notable. There are many others in the Meta world, but two of them are dedicated to virtual worlds. One is called the Presence Platform, which goes back to my initial term of co-presence. It is software for artists and developers to use to create environments, virtual worlds, where you can have things that happen co-presently. And they have an avatar SDK. So they're doubling down on being able to create interesting, expressive digital doubles of you. And we talked about this a lot in the last class with Jeff Chow, digital humans. So what does that mean? Does that mean you're going to create a simulacron of yourself that looks like you? So the Apple product, one of the things they showed in the video is you scan yourself with this LiDAR, and it creates a photorealistic three-dimensional graphic of you that you can then animate using its eye tracking and gesture control. Whereas Meta is letting you create an avatar of yourself using some kind of avatar creation tools, which they're now opening up with software tools for anybody. So a developer can create their own ways of using and creating avatars. Interesting. Apple, which is $1 trillion company, it is the largest company that there has ever been on the planet. So they have basically an unlimited amount of capability. Now, you could have all the money in the world, all the people in the world, but it is still difficult to coordinate them. So by no means does that give them unlimited power. However, they have been able to create a lot of developer tools above and beyond what Meta has offered. And these are the ones that are relating to the Vision Pro, which, by the way, they've announced has its own operating system, which, by the way, is not interoperable with the other HMDs. But hey, it's not Facebook, so Hortense, you can be happy that you don't have to be a member of Facebook anymore. You can go to the Apple ecosystem, right?
But, you know, Qualcomm is allegedly donated 5G system. But I'm a Mac user, so
Well, you also don't want to get on Facebook, so you're still going to have to be a Facebook user.
this I do, but not for Apple.
Not for Apple. Apple has much better security reputation, much better privacy, and much better privacy reputation. But that's another tangent we could go off on. Well, talking about just the software development tools, Swift UI is all about what's your name again? Sorry, Yoon. It's all about our interactive technology and human interaction design. That's what that's all about. It's how to create unique UX in virtual worlds. Reality Kit is all about AR. It's all about trying to create digital objects, digital twins, and manipulate them. AR Kit is about using that in a real world environment so you can place it on a table so that you can scan a room and instantly know where the physical objects are. So you can put the virtual objects in the physical room and it knows where it all is and you can manipulate it. And I mean, they're not unique to this, right? There's AR kits from Snapdragon, from Meta, from now Niantic Labs but they have their own, right? Reality Composer, now that's unique. So Reality Composer lets you create scenes and manipulate these scenes. So these things overlap quite a bit with what? With not with the movie. Well, analogous. It's analogous to post-production, but very far from linear. So it's more overlapping with game engines, Unity and Unreal Engine. So Apple announced their partner is Unity. So these things, they interoperate with Unity, not so much with Unreal Engine. So that's kind of interesting. And then on the lower left here is very interesting. So they have a thing called Physical Audio Specialization Engine. And that, Ewan, is your 3D audio, where you can manipulate sound in a three-dimensional virtual space with a very high level of sophistication. This is the kind of stuff that in the movie business, specialists in mixing, sound mixing, spend months and months perfecting for a feature film with a surround sound system like Dolby, or Lucasfilms has their own as well. But this is Apple's answer to localization of sound in virtual environments, including things like where are the walls? How does the sound reflect off virtual wall? How does it go around virtual objects that are in the way? Very interesting. I started reading through the documentation for this, and I don't think there's much else like that I've seen brought together in one thing that's free. So Apple's got a pretty interesting stack for developing. I mean, there's a lot of other things, but now we're going to talk about what this means. So this is this word that I want to talk about a little bit, because I think it's now very relevant for the field in general, is if you decide to go spend thousands of hours of your life building a sophisticated metaverse, XR, immersive experience, what's it going to run on? And you don't want it to run on the wrong horse. Or another horribly, stretched analogy would be you've got the right horse, but it's on the wrong track. So your horse, the Kentucky Derby's over there, but you brought it to the wrong place. So now everyone's over the Kentucky Derby and you're over here and there's only 3 people in the stands. Pick your metaphor, right? But where are you going to run this thing and what software is it going to be? And is it going to interoperate with these different devices and other software? So standards can be something dictated by a company, in which case it's only a standard in the ecosystem of that. It's kind of like a dictatorship, right? I mean, if you go to North Korea, you better obey the one leader of North Korea, right? If you go to a parliamentary democracy, you've got a better chance at doing different things. So some of these things are standards only in the sense that they're standards of the company. Other things are industry standards, which means they should work on anything like the World Wide Web, like HTML. So here's a few of the standards. So the problem with standards are there's so many of them that no standard is actually standard. The spatial web is a really interesting standard, and that goes back to this term of spatial computing. So Apple did not invent the term spatial computing, but they're sort of taking it over and redefining it. Spatial computing has to do with how does a computer understand a three-dimensional space? And how do you manipulate things in that three-dimensional space? We've seen a lot of examples throughout this course, whether it's cyber archaeology or scientific visualization or gaming or documentary immersive experiences. So this is an organization that thinks they have a way of a standard to address three-dimensional space for virtual interaction. So we have this for 2D space. It's called longitude and latitude. It's called XYZ coordinates. But what's the standard for this spot right here? What's the standard for this spot right there? International. Is there an international universal standard so I can address any place and manipulate it? Well, the Spatial Web Foundation thinks they have it. We can run the video and I'll show you. Yeah. Yes.
a company standard?
It's not a company standard. It's a organization. But it's an organization that is self-appointed. So I could decide to, I've actually thought about it. I could decide to create a standard for something and promote it and see if I can get everyone to that. That's a great idea, Stuart. We're going to go, that's a good standard. Let's just use that because it works with everything and it's brilliant. So what's another standard that everybody uses? Bitcoin is a standard. Blockchain is not a standard. It's a category, but the Bitcoin blockchain is a standard. All these crypto technologies like ETH has a standard, but who said they were the standard? They didn't. So the Spatial Web Foundation is an organization that has decided that they want to dictate the standard. You tell me. I mean, from a sociological point of view, it probably isn't. However, no one else is doing it. And maybe it's a good idea. I mean, Gabriel Rene, who runs the Spatial Web Foundation, he wrote a book and a white paper. It has a bunch of advisors and technologists that go, great idea. Let's just use this. Because if they don't create an open standard, then you're going to give it up to a company. Right. Right. Well, who's going to come up with the standard? Come up with a better one. Maybe we'll follow yours and go your pyramid scheme. I mean, I don't know Tim Berners-Lee, right? One person came up with HTML, and that was at CERN, and that became the standard that we all use a million times a day, and it works really well. And it's an open standard. There's an organization. It's quasi-democratic. If you want to change something, you can bring it up. Wikipedia has a standard, and they have a standards body, and they have a board, and they have people. Well, I mean, there's no perfect solution to this, and you need a solution because otherwise nothing works with anything. Okay, bolts and screws don't work together unless there's a standard. The Volumetric Format Association. Notice one's a foundation, one's an association. No, I mean, someone just made up this thing, but I talked about this the other day. Volumetric capture. There's no standard for that. Where you can do 3D volumetric video capture using either videography techniques with stereopsis or scanning. Material X. That's a rendering standard for 3D objects. A standard that goes way back to when I first learned computer graphics came from a company called Pixar. And Pixar originally was a technology company, and all they made was software for rendering. And it's called RenderMan. And that was 30 years ago out of Lucasfilms. And Steve Jobs acquired Pixar because of that standard. Prior to that, there was Thinking Machines Inc., TMI, but TMI was not the same as Pixar. Pixar used TMI in their rendering computer, but the main thing that Pixar did was they built the rendering software, and that has become a standard. That's a company standard. That's Pixar, the company, and they sell it, right? And it's used in every major motion picture. These two on the bottom, okay, the one on the bottom, WebGL, was out in 1995. And that's so that you could describe virtual worlds in a browser. And the iteration of that today is X3D, which is the web standard for virtual worlds. So that you can do it in a browser. No headset needed, right? No special device needed. Works with everything. Works with every computer. All the OSs. O3DE is a more specialized, more sophisticated standard. Doesn't work with anything. So now we've got a metaverse problem. So are we talking about Meta's metaverse? Or are we talking about Apple's non-metaverse metaverse? The metaverse that they didn't mention in their announcement, which is still a virtual world. So there's a standards body for that called the Metaverse Standards Forum. Now notice they call themselves a forum. So they're not even saying they're dictating what the standard should be. They're just getting you to pay so that you can meet with other companies and discuss what it might be. Otherwise, you could make something for Apple and it's not going to work in the Oculus. It's not going to work in Meta, right? Or whatever other device, which could be a painful thing for developers. So the Metaverse Forum has a lot of members now. And like it or not, the people that are running it are getting closer to getting all these companies to start to agree on something so that your avatar and your immersive thing could work in a lot of different places, right? Notice what's not on this list. Bingo. So this might be an interesting chasm. It's always been this way for a lot of things. But now we're here again. I'm just pointing it out, right? And it's a decision, and this is a debate, and this is a discussion. And it's also important for us that want to start, making stuff where you're going to put your energy. Because it's a lot of learning curve and it's a lot of labor. And it's an extra amount of labor to make things interoperate. So the bottom is the more open standard, right? Which is the World Wide Web version of it, which is called X3D, which works with all these different products on all these different devices and all these different operating systems. But maybe now with all the capabilities. So I'm just pointing this out, something to think about, because now we have not a metaverse, but metaverse says. And this has been going on for a long time already. So, I include Roblox and Minecraft. Roblox and Minecraft, by any good definition of a world or a metaverse, they are worlds that people created, that they share, that they interact in. Second Life was doing this, 15 years ago. But now we have all these other ones. And each one has different characteristics, different rules, and different business models. AltSpace VR, sadly, was very good and popular. And it was a small company that went BK, was acquired by Microsoft. Microsoft put a lot of effort into it, a lot of people, and a lot of people used it, and it was becoming a standard. Gone, which just means it was not an industry standard, right? It was Microsoft's product, and it wasn't profitable, and they just shut it down. So if you put a lot of time and effort in building your world in AltSpace VR, sorry, you got to redo it again somewhere else. Now, could you take some of the assets and labor and work and design? Sure, but how much of it was specific to AltSpace VR? Voxels, which is this icon over here, Hyperfi, Somnium are blockchain virtual worlds where you can, quote, own real estate, virtual real estate in the world. Now, what does that mean even? I mean, how can you create scarcity if it's virtual? You can create an infinite amount of virtual real estate in servers someplace, right? Yet you could create something where you could own it and it could be verifiable, right? This is good discussion with Krista, who's an expert in this. Decentraland also has a blockchain connection. Sandbox, I'll make this deck available because these little squares here are the videos. They all have sizzle videos, but in my opinion, they all say the same thing. They all sound exactly the same. Interact with other people and create your world and design an environment and have an avatar, and you can meet in this virtual world. And to me, they all sound very similar. Cavernous and WorldViz are two examples of industrial, commercial world building platforms. Now I'm going to get into some of them in a little more detail before we take a break. I get Krista. So these two, Sentio is specifically for architects. WorldViz is an entire company scripting language and toolkit for creating virtual worlds for industrial purposes, for designers, for architects, for engineers, for site planners, and WorldViz, has got a lot of really interesting examples when you go to their site. Cavernous is another one, which is specifically designed for commercial applications. You can pull in complex CAD models. You can pull in complex Blender models. You can interact with it with other people. It's designed for work, not for gaming. Unlike Horizon Worlds, which is the highly controversial meta answer to a metaverse. But as we now know, it doesn't work with everything. So are you working in Meta Horizon World, which is sort of, as you can see, marketed and positioned as a fun thing. But they have a version of it for work. Now, what's the difference between the fun version for socialization and gaming and the work version? I don't really know, but it has some tools in it that are more Zoom-like, but the positioning is clear. You can work like in Zoom, but in 3D. They're not the only ones. Right out of UC San Diego, born here, developed here, and spun out of here is Virbela, which is arguably the most successful virtual world system platform for work. Thousands of people go into a Virbela campus every day for work. My son's grandfather is a real estate professional. He's been in real estate for 40 years. He's one of the top realtors in the country. Not in a million years would I ever think that he would be an avatar, a cartoonish looking avatar running around on a virtual campus doing escrow closes. And guess what? He is now using it on a daily basis because eXp Realty acquired Virbela and uses it exclusively as their real estate offices. And the money they save in physical buildings, they give back to their brokers as higher commissions and stock benefits. And it works. And guess what? It's been like a week and he doesn't remember that he's an avatar. He interacts with people like they're real. And they're cartoonish avatars in the 3D world. And it has a lot of really good tools like a Zoom. It's got whiteboards, it's got chat, it's got rooms that can instantaneously reconfigure from an auditorium for a giant meeting where thousands of people can actually sit in an auditorium to a little workspace. Cones of sound, all sorts of tools. That's Virbela. Another company that Virbela acquired is the same idea. It's called Frame.io, but it works in a browser. Neither one of these work in the Oculus very well or a headset. They're both use flat screens. Immerse is a company dedicated to corporate training and development in virtual worlds. And it allows people to build training and courses and put them in one standardized framework so they're interoperable and they can track what the students and the trainees are doing in these virtual courses, these virtual trainings. So there's a few of them. A lot of them are for medical and emergency situations, lockouts, first responder training, military training, law enforcement training, and just business stuff. Things that are very hard to do for real or very expensive, but as we've talked about, you can simulate it pretty well and at least get you close to proficient before you get into a more expensive real simulation. And again, born and bred right out of UC San Diego is this company Nano, which I talked about before. I did an interview with Steve McCloskey one of the co-founders, and it is a virtual collaborative environment for nano engineering, which mostly means drug discovery and molecular modeling. Works really well. This is a virtual clinical tool where you can actually do physical therapy and psychotherapy using HMD virtual world mediated environments. So the physical therapist can be guiding you through exercises and you're doing it and seeing it on the other side. This company was mentioned in the Apple announcement as one of their initial development partners. And right here at UCSD, we have StarCave. And we've been doing this here at UCSD since the early 90s. These virtual caves or environments. And this is Professor Tom Levy, who has been doing cyber archaeology and cyber marine archaeology and preserving these things to display in these caves, which you'll see next week. And just a couple of words about back to our location-based entertainment. What is this? Anybody know what this is? That is a planetarium projector. So the virtual worlds go back to these location-based entertainment venues, like the one from Dreamscape, which was an arcade, which created, these immersive environments. And now that you've got these tools becoming available, will it become a mass medium? Are there going to be enough headsets? Is the Apple one going to be the one? Is it going to come down in price? Is the Meta one going to be the right? But one thing's for sure, the options and the tools have now taken a giant leap. With that, I'm going to stop sharing and take a break while I get Krista Kim on. She's already on. Let's see here. So we're going to take a little break online, folks. Hi, Sasha. And I'm going to pause. That's all right. Thanks for
appointment. Yeah.
Okay, well, I had one of those too.
Yeah. I had an idea for Apple's metaverse.
Maybe you could pitch it to Apple.
What if it was called iSpace?
What is it?
What if it was called iSpace?
Like EYE?
Like, I'll put it in the chat.
Like the letter I. Right.
Their
maybe
virtual
we
world
can-
solution.
Yeah. Should be here any minute.
Seriously?
Yeah.
I just wondered.
No, I got it for you. Oh, there you are. Hi, Krista. Let's see. We're taking a little break. Good, fine. Look great. That's great. I'm going to show you the room. There's the room we're in. I just talked about the Apple announcement and all the interesting virtual world building tools and platforms and our event coming up next week, which I should put in the, how do I put that in here?
Everyone's still buzzing since yesterday. It was a big announcement, wasn't it?
It was. Did I send you I didn't send it to you. Let me send it to you now. This is the event that I'm gonna have here next Tuesday for the last class.
Okay. In the chat or?
I put it in your text.
Okay.
Yeah, I should be able to put it in the chat, right? Yeah. Put it in the chat. So I'm gonna have some more of these coming up, maybe one more before the end of summer.
Oh, great.
Panel discussions.
Amazing. Wonderful.
Gonna pin you. Boom.
Oh, this is happening on campus. Great. Very nice. Very nice.
So this is the classroom on the 4th floor that you can see through the owl. And this is the first XR immersive media class in the building.
Oh, how fun.
First
This
ones
is
we ever
great.
did.
Wow, wow. Well, it's definitely what we need.
And later we can talk about hi, hey, good to be back. We get pizza too, so now we're gonna get pizza delivered, although it's late, so it's hungry. But we can talk later about figuring out how to apply for some grants to do some research.
Yeah.
The second class I did, which I'll send you the deck for, I had a bunch of professors who are doing research in XR on campus.
Okay.
One of them is doing cyber archaeology. One is
Ooh,
doing cyber paleontology,
wow.
and Dr. Very is doing neuroscience using VR environments.
Right. That's what I want to study is basically AI generative art that mitigates anxiety. And I also want to do a study on the embodiment in an avatar and that experience, how that affects people's physiology and psychology. And the experience of being embodied in the metaverse and what, how therapy, how effective it is, what the differences are. And of course, my friend Srini, Dr. Srini Pillay, talks about the exposome, about how our metaverse experiences affects our mental state. So that's also a very interesting topic as well.
I started out giving them a quote from your Techism manifesto.
Oh, very nice. Thank you.
As I started the class. I'm gonna put in the chat. There's a organization on campus here called the Denny Sanford Institute for Empathy and Compassion.
Right.
And the Arthur C. Clarke Center for Human Imagination that I'm part of got a grant from them to study empathy in VR.
Right. That's amazing.
That's the closest thing I know of to what you just said.
Very interesting. Let me take that.
But I can talk to you more about that. We can, put our heads together and come up with some grant proposals. While we're kind of reconvening, I want to introduce you to a colleague of mine who also is a very accomplished conceptual and digital artist. Her name is Professor. Are you Professor? Yeah, you're Professor. Yeah. Yeah, you. Talking about you, like who else? Who else is a very accomplished conceptual digital artist? Hortense.
Hi.
There's not that many. Hortense has an extraordinary portfolio. I'll connect you with her, but
Nice.
tell her about your your organization.
Oh, yeah, so,
Let me put it on the owl so she can hear you. I gotta remember to manage the oh, okay, go ahead.
hey, so nice to meet you. I'm Hortense Gerardo. I'm the director of the Anthropology, Performance and Technology program. And my program is serving as an intersectional bridge between the Jacob School of Engineering and other departments. It's sort of like a mini humanities and social sciences department embedded within the Jacob School to be teaching, communication skills, leadership, negotiation, ethics, kind of these kind of competencies that our corporate affiliates recognize that our recent graduates and mid-career engineers are in need of some supplementation. And so there's the educational arm for that program, but I also I'm very fortunate to have a creative applied research arm in which fellow artists slash scientists are developing new forms of narrative storytelling using things like that. Your screen is there, it's jumping back and forth. And then there's a community outreach segment in which we're trying to make a lot of our work available to the general public.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. I
Very, very
want
exciting.
Thank you, and thank you for that, Stuart.
You're welcome. I introduced Krista Kim a little earlier, and I gave you some context. But I guess it's easier if you just introduce yourself, because there's so many things. It's hard to, I told them a little bit about techism. I told them about, some of the things you're famous for, the Mars House and the Times Square Continuity Project. But why don't you just introduce yourself and tell the class a little bit about you?
So I have been practicing digital art since 2012. I began practicing digital art when I was enrolled in a Master's of Fine Art program at LaSalle College of the Arts. So I was painting before then. So I understand art from a painterly perspective, even though I use the digital medium. So my artistic sort of epiphany came to me when I used to live in Japan. I was there between 2005 and 2008 in Tokyo, and I would frequent Kyoto. And Kyoto is a special place. I feel that it is a living metaverse. And it was at the Roenji Temple Garden, which is one of the most sacred Zen gardens, where I experienced Zen as an immersive experience. It's over 500 years old, and the Zen monks created this immersive experience to instill a state of Zen in the viewer. So my takeaway from that was that art can be a service to humanity in creating peaceful states and stress relief. And I was so inspired by that experience that I wanted to translate that into the digital realm. So I began to meditate regularly in 2013 as I was enrolled in this program in Singapore at LaSalle. And I decided to depart from painting and go into digital and create Zen experiences on the screen. Because I felt that the screen at the time, 2012, I was pretty new to the iPhone. The smartphone was still a new device for all of us. And I felt that there was a lot of mental health issues related to it. I felt that I was distracted all the time, that I was feeling FOMO, that social media was making people narcissistic, and I felt very uncomfortable, always, pretending that life is perfect and showing a very, fake view of who we are. And I wasn't really agreeable to that. So I felt that tech and our devices was actually informing our culture when it used to be that art would do that. And I didn't think it was healthy because the intention was not for humanity. And so I'm really sort of deeply rooted in you know the intention of the tools that we use and how it affects us. And you know, lo and behold, we now have the largest population of depressed and lonely people in the world. And that's why I wrote the Techism Manifesto in 2014, because I felt that being in an art institution, we were encouraged to stay with the traditional modalities of expressing ourselves in art. And it was actually valued more than the new, than the digital. And I thought that was ridiculous as an artist. And so I just said, okay, well, let's write a manifesto, because I feel that all the artists, everybody is guilty of not paying attention to the zeitgeist and the future. And only because they don't understand it. They don't know how to use a computer, or they don't know how to use the software, but that's not an excuse. Techism is about engaging with engineers and you know, technologists and anyone you can, just to get a project done. It's all about collaboration and learning and sharing ideas. And so that's where I began my journey as an artist. And ever since then, I've been creating public art. The one artwork that I'm really proud of is Continuum in Times Square. Took over 96 screens right after COVID. It was meant to be an immersive meditative experience in Times Square, one of the most frenetic and you know, busiest places in the world and the center of capitalism. And I think basically symbolically, I wanted to create a space where we shut all of that off and we create a space for people to be vulnerable and to come together and to feel empathy and compassion. And that was very effective. And I learned a lot from that experience. And I also have been involved in NFTs from the standpoint of being someone who is pro decentralization, pro blockchain, pro decentralized finance. I know there's all this nonsense with FTX and centralized exchanges, but I believe very firmly that decentralized systems such as Bitcoin are going to win, and that we are going to actually experience you know, safety in our future because of the existence of these you know, this blockchain. And I also believe that the future of the metaverse and AI and blockchain is the convergence of these technologies. I feel that people are so siloed in their expertise, there's not enough of an integration, but I truly believe that the integration is where it's at. And that's the sweet spot. And that's where a lot of incredible things can happen. And the intention for me is to create at the leading edge and at this convergence to shepherd it toward humanity and for mental health and wellness and education.
You want to talk a little bit about your studio, Zero?
Yes, of course. So I started a startup with this in mind. I really felt that in the metaverse, there was so much focus on commercialism. And I don't think that we should be using this powerful emergent technology only to buy things and create shopping malls and Walmarts, or casinos, you know, that which, you know, for me is the worst case scenario. I think that it should be used for, you know, elevating human potential and you know, elevating our intelligence, our ability to learn, taking advantage of the immersive experiences that we can bring, you know, to the education system, to experiences. So this is the kind of ethos that we have, and we want to introduce these kinds of projects that are very much focused on culture, education, and mental health and wellness.
So you talk about the Zero RB system, and you've done a couple of NFTs through that studio. And the log line here is Web 3.0 Innovation Lab and Web 2.5 Metaverse Studio. So what do you mean by that?
So basically, Web 3.0 is not here yet. We're not going to, we're starting, but we're not quite there. I mean, Web 3.0 is only going to be a thing when there's mass adoption, especially in the sphere of crypto, right? Because it's very much centered on tokenization, decentralization. And so, I think there's a baby step, there's Web 2.5. And you see a lot of, companies, for example, Amazon, Starbucks, Disney, who are going to be releasing NFT projects, the digital physical merchandising or experiences and membership, tokenization strategies. And I think that Web 2.5 is the gateway to 3.0, but we're not going to get there for a few more years. There's still a lot of, fear and prejudice against crypto right now in the mainstream, which we need to work on that and show positive use cases and, what Web 3.0 is really about, which is community first, co-creation, community, this kind of thing.
So now that there's all these different, I guess I want to call them products more than platforms that claim to be metaverses. We talked about some of them, like Decentraland and Sandbox and Horizon World and Horizon Work World and whatever Apple's equivalent is going to be. I talked to them tonight about standards and interoperability and the Metaverse Standard Foundation. What do you think about this? And are you building for all the above, or is what you're building another platform that people can use that interoperates with all the above?
It's a really good question, Stuart, because there's a short-term solution and then there's a long-term vision. There's a company that Neil Stephenson actually created the word metaverse in his book, The Snow Crash. And he also co-founded a company called Lamina One with Peter Vesnes. And this company is creating an open metaverse protocol on Avalanche blockchain so that you can create a robust, scalable creators economy that's an open metaverse where anyone can build on the layer 2 as a creator, and you can actually tokenize what you create and create experience economy, digital assets, on this layer 1 protocol, because the vision is to create an interoperable open metaverse that can bring in the world, that can bring in billions of people, because really, in order for the metaverse to be truly successful and sustainable is if you have scalability. And right now, the number one issue is that there is no scalability, that's the biggest limitation. And that is what a lot of the platforms are trying to work on, right? So I would say that the first generation of metaverse are actually gaming platforms that have rebranded into metaverse because they're simply multiplayer games on the blockchain. Sandbox, Decentraland, I mean, these are all like gaming platforms more like, but then of course there is a, fluidity between, gaming and metaverse, but primarily I think that the metaverse is a place where you can actually have serious interactions as well. It's not always about games. But it can be about, serious topics, education, health and wellness, et cetera, et cetera. So right now where I build, and ever since actually, and yesterday's launch was a it was a breakthrough because we know now that the future of a spatialized internet is a reality, and that the technology is moving toward that direction. A lot of people were disenchanted with metaverse after Facebook's Meta dropped the metaverse after they failed to monetize and failed to create compelling content, et cetera, et cetera. So Apple has now picked up that torch, even though they don't formally call themselves a metaverse. Eventually, what this will become is a metaverse project. and they build on Unity. So there's this, this head-to-head competition between Unreal Engine, which is owned by Epic Games, and Unity. And the great advantage of Unity is that you can use it on your mobile phones. And so AR is now going to be much more powerful, I think, much more sort of strong in development and in attention. And it makes more sense because everyone has a smartphone. Like we can all already create, we all have interacted with AR, right? So it just makes more sense. But the technology will reach a point where we will wear AR glasses that are kind of like sunglasses and very fashionable, and they'll be extremely sophisticated. And I think that 5th generation, Apple glasses are going to be so great that we're going to be walking around. Digital fashion will be like $1 trillion industry, and we'll just be interacting with the world with a persistent digital layer, and that will be the open metaverse.
What is your recommendation then for the folks here and watching this that want to create?
Yeah.
Now it's exploded in complexity.
Yes.
And I mentioned this in the lecture that you have SDKs, which is kind of a misnomer. And Apple has an impressive stack now of software tools. Meta has their own stack of software tools. Of course, you also got different ones for, Snapchat, and a few other companies have their own. Do you have any guidance for creators?
It depends on what you want to do. I think that, creating experiences is where it's at, like meaningful experiences. If you think about, joining the creators economy for Apple, just the Vision Pro, where it's going, I think that that's going to expand over the years. Certainly it is a niche product, right? It's very expensive. But what they're going to develop into is something much more mass, a cheaper hardware, and therefore, they need content. So content is key, and I think creating really, compelling immersive experience content is really interesting. With a purpose. I think that it's important to create educational content, content that actually adds value to people's lives. There's so much content out there in the world that needs to be translated into the immersive experience, and it's a whole new storytelling medium, so it's quite exciting. I think that's
so like, what do you do? Like, what do you create? Like, you're famous for the Mars house. Maybe talk a little bit about that, which is a beautiful piece of art. First of all, forget about everything else. It's a beautiful piece of digital art. And one of the things that, I think I noticed you with the Times Square thing, and I read about it, and you just took the idea of a gradient and turned it into art. And I always liked Rothko, and it reminded me of Rothko. And I used to go to the Art Institute of Chicago on my lunch break when I worked in downtown Chicago, and I used to look at the Rothkos. And it was like a meditation for me. And then you built this Mars house, which you NFT'd. What do you, what tools do you use, and how do you make stuff now? And talk a little bit about how you did the Mars house.
The Mars house was built on Unreal Engine during the height of the COVID crisis. It was March of 2020. We were all in global lockdown, and I began to daydream about creating this house that I can visit in VR. So I started the project, and then we finished it by May, and it was my pride and joy. I basically integrated my video art concepts into the house, and I designed it, and I created the substrates of the ceiling and the floor as video installations. I pictured that it would be Samsung wall technology or some giant LED wall technology installed in the house. And I kind of envisioned that, the future of architecture will be that we have LED walls that are actually, our walls instead of, plain walls. So that's what I created. I wanted to create like just some design ideas, some concepts that I came up with. And I didn't know at the moment that I didn't know that I was going to mint it. I didn't intend for it to be an artwork in itself, even though we created these beautiful videos, out of the project on Unreal Engine. And then come December of 2020, I discovered Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I decided to jump into NFTs, and I joined the whitelist for Super Rare, which is a major NFT sales platform and gallery. And I signed up and I was accepted for February intake, and I minted my very first artwork in February, and that was such an enthralling experience. It's so exciting. And it was just one of my gradient pieces. My gradients are not made of, just Photoshop gradient. It's actually made of light that I created back in 2012. And it was like they didn't have the gradient button on Photoshop at that time. So what I would do is I would actually gather images of light, and I'd manipulate it and then create these beautiful gradients that are, if you look at it, there's something different about it because it's energy, and you can see the energy, and it's the tones and the lights, and it's a different kind of experience, especially when you print it on a plexiglass, which is how I used to display it before NFTs. So I basically minted one of those pieces that I used to print on plexiglass, and it used to cost me thousands of dollars to print on plexiglass and a frame one piece. And so I was thrilled that I can present an artwork, just digitally, and it just changed my life. And then March of 2020, I was like, well, I saw, in the landscape of NFTs, everything was in JPEGs and MP4s. And I thought, wow, this is very, very early. And I thought the future of NFTs will be 3D digital assets powered by AI. And so I was like, okay, well, let's move things along. Let's mint a 3D house. And, sort of offer it as a metaverse house, because a lot of collectors are already building houses in Somnium Space, Cryptovoxels, Decentraland, and they're creating galleries and hanging their JPEGs in this space. And I thought, wow, I might as well just see if I could, actually sell this house as an installation. And so that's how I came up with the idea, and I minted it, and it sold for a record amount. And it caught a lot of attention, and that's the history of the Mars house.
What happened to it now? Like, what is it? How is it? Is the owner known to you, and did they do anything with it?
Yeah, AOI is the owner. He's a well-known collector in the space, and he has it, and it's one of his favorite pieces. And he owns it. And so
does he display it somewhere? Like, what does he do with it?
I'm sure he does. And I updated the files for a museum show. So I showed the piece in a few museum shows, and I updated the 3D assets in UE5. And so I offered him those assets to upgrade and to create a metaverse project, which he did. But unfortunately, when you're creating an Unreal Engine, you can't automatically create metaverse from a UE file, because you need to use pixel streaming, and cloud pixel streaming costs a fortune, because you have to pay per person per minute that enters your space. However, if you're building on Unity, then you could take advantage of platforms like Spatial, or Mona, or on Cyber, and they're free. You don't have to pay.
This is really interesting, because it goes back around to industry standards and open standards versus closed walled gardens and company owned standards, and why it's beneficial to have these open standards.
Yeah,
that are rigorous, that can compete against companies.
Yeah. Oh, the open metaverse is a movement, certainly, and it's one that I think will prevail, because there's no one company Meta already proved that it's important. It's impossible to own the metaverse, even if you name yourself after it. It's a thing. It's co-creation and collaboration. Can you own the universe? No.
Yeah, it was notable that was a word that was not used in the Apple announcement?
I think, it's a bad word. The metaverse and crypto are bad words right now. You say those words, people look at you like, ooh, like you have a disease. 2 months ago, I was at TED and I gave a Web3 talk with Yatsu, who's the CEO of Animoca, and Kevin Owoki, who's a brilliant Ethereum developer. And let me tell you, it was a very small, intimate room. And at the conference of TED, where you have like 5,000 people, there are only like 100 people in the room. So it's a very niche and outlier space. And so that's where I saw like, wow, I wasn't expecting us to be so niche and, even outlier in this group of outliers. So we're early, we're very early. And I think a lot of the bad apples in the space, unfortunately, have created a very bad impression on Web3, where people think that metaverse and crypto and everything is like all in the same boat and it's all like a failure. But no, it's not the case. The future is AI, metaverse, and 3D spatialized internet on blockchain. And my point was this: AI, there's so much fear around AI, and yes, rightly so. I mean, AI is the most powerful technology, ever exposed to man. And so we have to take it seriously. And AI insurgency, especially of our data and our identity, is a big threat. And so blockchain is the only answer to protect us. My theory is that Web3 will experience mass adoption by necessity, as security against the threat of AI. Our identity is now going to go into the blockchain. What does it mean to be a human in the digital age? It means to have a blockchain identity that's immutable. And so basically, we are going to go into a future now where we are not going to believe what we see on the streams on the internet, et cetera, et cetera. We're not going to believe it without verification. Blockchain provides the verification. So if you're a creator like myself, I have a blockchain signature. I will verify all of my art, and that can be verified by everybody will have their AI agent, and the AI agent will confirm that is an authentic Krista Kim artwork. Yes, and that's her speaking in this video. She gave this interview. It's not a deep fake, et cetera, et cetera.
Wow. That's a really interesting answer. I wanted to ask you about so one of the things that made me think of is on the Apple announcement, you scan yourself with the LiDAR camera and it gives you a photorealistic 3D avatar.
Yeah.
And then it has retinal identification on it, and it has eye tracking. So it's got a lot of those features built into it. You're also a digital fashion designer, and you've also gotten commissions from brands.
Yeah.
And all of this goes back around to authentication and provenance.
Yes.
But do you think that because one problem is you can have your biometric data stolen, so if you have your biometric data stolen, then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So you can deepfake your biometric data. But putting that aside for a minute, did you like that feature in the Apple announcement? Did you think that was an adequate answer to what you just said?
I actually think that blockchain is the only, way that we can, cryptography and securing our assets, securing our data through cryptography is the only way that we can really, preserve our human rights, our identity, our assets. I think that this is becoming more and more apparent, but we can't just like throw everyone into a new system, right? I mean, it's so revolutionary that people have to take steps into it. So I think that Apple is taking baby steps. We're meeting people where they are, and it's very smart what they're doing because it's not alienating, it's not threatening, it's already integrating their pre-existing products. So there's already this affinity. There's no friction. But I feel that moving forward, especially younger generations who are more exposed to crypto and Web3 will become more and more comfortable with the idea of digital identity in the blockchain. But I think that this system is basically going to be one that everyone has to know about, and there's going to be like people have to be educated on it. So education is key. Sam Altman has created WorldCoin. WorldCoin he created the problem, which is OpenAI, and he created the solution, which is the blockchain backed identity, so that that it's a solution to the OpenAI threat. So, but it's all by retinal scans. I mean, there are going to be heartbeat scans, retinal scans. I mean, these systems are going to come out, but I don't trust anything unless it's decentralized. I don't know. I just don't want one company to, wield that much power. I think I just want, I'd rather, like Bitcoin, I'd rather trust a decentralized system.
Are you still pursuing a digital fashion design?
Yeah, I am very much. Love AI.
So this gets into, when you say, so you've done, I think for Fabricant, is what some of your designs are in Fabricant. Purely digital creations, right? That can't actually be physically made or worn. And are you thinking that this is what Avatar are going to, you're going to wear this on your avatar and there'll be a marketplace for that?
Oh yeah, I think that if the fashion industry, what they should be doing is creating this interoperable enterprise solution to provide everyone in the world with their avatar. And this avatar should be connected to the blockchain and should be your identifier. This is you. So if you go to the doctor, if you go to a store, whatever you do, like this avatar is you, it's your digital twin. And we'll have a record of everything you've done, everything you purchased, and everything you experience. So I actually think that when people have an avatar, they will buy fashion for it, because nothing sucks than having a naked mannequin in front of you, right? Like or a Barbie. Everybody wants to dress their Barbie. So same difference. But I honestly believe once the Apple glasses become very lightweight and very fashionable and chic, which they will one day, and there'll be other brands, we're all going to be decked out in digital fashion.
So you're envisioning where this digital fashion will be an AR wearable.
I think it'll be interoperable. I think it'll be XR.
XR, okay, XR. So you might be a avatar in one context, and you might be you in another context, but wearing something.
So absolutely. So your wallet will be like a closet, and you want to choose what you want to wear. So I want to wear this dress. So you're out there in the world and you're wearing this dress. Whoever is on the same frequency as you, or headsets could be the Vision Pro, who knows, wearing this, and they could see you wearing it. And I think that it's more fun for people if you're on the same channel, right? And then of course they'll have another version that will go on your avatar. So there'll be multi-file formats for AR, for your avatar, the same asset, but interpreted in different file formats.
Let me open it up to the people in the room first. Some of your questions. I'm sure by now you've gotten a lot of things to think about. Krista just basically has outlined an entire another course. Go ahead, yeah, Cortez, go ahead.
This was so informative, Krista. Thank you so much. There's so many questions I have. I guess the first one that I have really is, about the whole notion of cryptocurrency as an energy drain, and where is the resource going to come from if everyone goes over to blockchain and insists on their digital IDs. That was, I think, probably the biggest news that not turned me off to cryptocurrency, but made me think twice about it. And how do you address it?
Oh, I mean, okay, so Ethereum, which I'm a big fan of, is actually carbon neutral. It transitioned from proof of work to proof of stake. So it's like 99%, completely eco-friendly. So when you talk about Bitcoin as well, there are initiatives definitely to convert to natural, energy sources. For example, in El Salvador, they're going into volcanic energy, and they're going to create a bond of volcanic energy to actually push an initiative to just have the entire Bitcoin mining operation powered by volcanoes. So, there are all these solutions that are coming to the fore, and I understand that, in some countries, burning coal and all this nonsense is a problem, but there are, I mean, the community is very mindful of it, is what I'm saying, and it is a part of the dialogue, and they are taking steps, real initiatives to solve those problems. And Ethereum has done it, so which is amazing.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Jesse.
What's your take on the fact that lots of digital art can just be copied and used by others? What's your take on that?
So that was the real problem for me before NFTs, was when I created my art, the part of the value proposition is rarity when you have an artwork, and that could be the medium itself. So if you have one painting on a canvas, it's that one, right? But if you create an artwork that's digital, anyone can copy and paste it. So provenance is impossible to prove. But if you mint it as an NFT, that solves the problem. So because the ownership and all the activities related to the buying and selling of that asset is all on an open source ledger, right? So it's immutable, no one can tamper with that. And so it's a permanent record, and that solves the
So it has to be there's got to be a blockchain component to authenticate something. Good job.
It's getting cold, I have to. Yeah.
Good time because Krista froze.
Does she work at UCSD?
No,
Where is she based?
West Hollywood. She moved here from Canada about a year ago. Because LA has become the global epicenter in immersive media. And that's why she moved here. Which is logical because it is still the global epicenter for the entertainment industry. Even though it's less so, more dispersed, still is. And next time I can ask about the writer's strike. I don't know how she feels about that. She jumps back in. But that was great. I mean, a lot of really interesting issues that she brought up, and I have a lot of admiration for her. She's really accomplished. When you go look at her website, and there's many articles written about her. Since she's Canadian, she's much more known internationally than in the US. She's been on the cover of a lot of magazines, international magazines, as an artist and a fashion designer, and she gets these commissions from luxury brands. And she does NFTs or artwork to promote an aspect of the brand that's either an in-store experience. So you do it, you interact with it in the context of a place, or you do it virtually.
Fashion Week though was such a debacle,
Why?
Like, it was supposed to be like a big event for VR fashion worlds. A lot of mainstream fashion houses were putting a lot of investment in it, and they didn't get the audience that they were anticipating.
They didn't get the what?
The audiences that they were.
Oh, for which fashion week?
like New
New-
York.
New York?
New York Fashion Week, that was supposed to be like a huge drop, you know, for the VR world, and like I think Gucci, Versace, all these big names were expecting people to come in and drop in on their virtual showrooms, and it was like the reports were that it was kind of like a desert.
Yeah, yeah, it was, they built up these VR departments,
Yeah,
especially at Gucci. And they had a couple early successes where people are really interested in it, and then it sort of fizzled.
and why do you think that is? And what is,
It just doesn't work that well. So, you know, I think part of it is that if you do it on a flat screen,
Mhm,
you know, the novelty wears off pretty soon,
mhm,
and the designs don't convey enough in the virtual showrooms.
hmm. You mean the resolution? Is it a resolution problem or just a?
Well, you're a designer, so is it not just not compelling enough? And I think also part of it is the technology. It doesn't work as good. So if you're doing it in an HMD, which not enough people have. Like I did it in Allspace.
Mhm.
I also went to the Burning Man virtual world. And I thought, you know, there's some of the fashion shows in Allspace were pretty interesting. They held my attention for half an hour.
Mhm.
But what are they selling? So are they trying to show real designs in virtual shows? A lot of them were showing all digital designs in digital shows. And what do you do with the all digital designs? They're interesting artwork, but I don't know if all the pieces came together.
Mhm.
I think the Fabricant and DressX that we talked about are getting some success.
Mhm.
They're getting some traction. But it's still a toy. So when you put something on from the Fabricant or DressX, you AR wear it. Then you can capture it and you can post it. So that's kind of fun, right? It's a fun thing. So actually the most successful AR fashion company is Snapchat. With the snap lenses, because the snap lenses and Snapchat's AR kit is used with Tryon. So Tryon, which is what I've had experience in, is getting some traction. So it's now widely used for cosmetics, for eyewear and footwear. Clothes, it's been semi-successful so far. So it has been used in some of the commercial e-commerce sites for virtual try-on and virtual sizing. But that seems like a more promising area where you can try on real clothes. You know, you really look in them right before you buy and also wear them virtually. But what she was talking about, where you can use some blockchain verification, and if it gets more ubiquitous, where the devices, whether they're glasses or HMDs, or now, you know, that you're wearing glasses, I wear glasses half the time. And I now see you when you're wearing a t-shirt there, but now I put these on, and you're wearing this fantastical t-shirt with, you know, what was the play, the dream coat, or was it, the electric dream coat?
Oh, Joseph.
Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Technicolor dream coat, right? Like that, right? So they had this fantastical prop. But maybe everyone now gets to wear their fantastical digital art because we're all using the technology enough where you get to show it off.
Do you know if you'll be able to be turned off? So I don't want to see your shirt that way, like it's bothering me.
Well, that again, you know, it's all these questions. Well, you can take your glasses off. I mean, yeah, these are things that are only work through a device.
Right.
And is the device interoperable enough? And are there enough of them to get a critical mass? So again, World Wide Web. So that has become ubiquitous. Anybody can make a web page that everybody can look at on a desktop or a mobile device. So that's a great example of a global standard. That's not a company. No one owns HTML. No one owns the World Wide Web. No one owns TCP/IP. I mean, going even under the stack, TCP/IP is what makes the internet connect. You know, the idea of one computer connecting to another computer was not easy. You couldn't just, you know, get an IBM computer to connect to a, PDP computer. Or, another manufacturer, an SGI, that didn't work. So just creating the standard for getting computers to network together was a huge leap. We're doing this again in 5G. But just getting the same mobile standard worldwide has been a monumental task. Just the fact that most of the phones work in most of the world, most of the time, is kind of amazing. So now we're facing the same thing again. I mean, she gave some pretty good answers. And I think at this point, we're kind of back to where like the web was in the very beginning. With the immersive space, yet the tools are so much more sophisticated. So it's a decision. When you decide to create something, you're going to have to make some decisions.
Can I ask a question? Whether you would consider working in voxelized format on Sandbox, for example? Like, do you guys think that it would be worth it to create on Sandbox? Sandbox uses voxelized tools to make everything look boxy like Lego. Is that something you consider versus Unity?
Well, Hortense, this is good for you, right? Because you just did a piece for the Without Walls Festival.
Yeah.
And you did Hortense did a AR installation showing melting glaciers.
Wow, fantastic.
Thanks. Well, the thing is that, I was commissioned by La Jolla Playhouse because they recognize that the tools are interesting in and of themselves, but what they really want is content, like you were saying, Krista. That you can only hold the interest of an audience so long just looking at something that's interesting in 3D in the virtual space. But, people crave story. They want narrative to draw them in. And, I was trying to think when, Stuart, you asked, like, why do you think it failed? Like, Fashion Week, like, what was weird about it? I did not go into the space during that time. I said scheduled to do it, but my schedule wouldn't allow it. And I read about it. And what I had read was that people felt kind of very distant, like it felt lonely in that space. And so, Krista, do you think that once people get more accustomed to just shopping in that space or being in that space, that feeling of loneliness will go away? Or is that an inherent feature of basically entering into this medium where you're wearing these goggles, even the image of you is this kind of virtual avatar of your face? Do you think it's just an inherent part of being there that we just will get used to?
I think that people, that's a great question. And I agree with you. If there's nothing to do there, it's boring. And I went into a few of the installations during Metaverse Fashion Week, and what I observed is that there's no storytelling, and there's no way of storytelling there because it's so basic. There are no tools. All you have are the avatars in the space. Unless you bring in actors and create a theatrical experience or a musical experience or some kind of performance or some kind of a lecture or workshop, something that's interesting, or create group conversations, curate, it's just as if you're having strangers in a room. It's the same difference. So it's just that people are as their avatars. I agree. And that's why actually, here's the thing. My company started to create immersive experience portals. Like, basically what it is it's 360 video. Because VR content, a lot of beautiful VR content has no distribution. There's no real distribution model because there are no actual physical places to view them. But the metaverse is a great solution for that. And if you have an activation in the metaverse, why not have a portal that leads you into an immersive experience that tells a story about what you're doing, who you are, what's your brand, what's, let's take people on into a journey. So this kind of thing is what we need in the metaverse as well. And let me tell you, there's so many limitations on these platforms. Spatial, for example, I mean, it was only 6 months ago that you can have like 500 people in the room. Before that, it was only 50. Okay, and it was glitchy as hell. It still is glitchy. There are a lot of limitations here that we're dealing with. The sound quality is not that great. You can't really have performances in there. There is no perfect platform right now. So Decentraland is very limited because obviously the fidelity, the capabilities of the platform, there's nothing you can do. You can't play immersive content in it either. In Spatial, you can. We figured that out. And it works well, but it's not like it's not like something that everyone is doing right now, and that's the problem. So yeah, I think that storytelling is missing, and the metaverse has to be about conducting events and bringing storytelling.
Well, on that, I'm gonna let you go because I don't want to keep you too long. We really appreciate your contributing to this class, and we're gonna have you on campus. And we'll have a event and a panel discussion about this in the near future.
Great. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So good, so good.
Thanks, everyone online.